Right. I think we're live. We'll keep talking until someone shows up. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. This is a fancy hangout live with some special guests. You can see Mike, Nick, and Ben. I'm the odd one out, although technically Nick's the odd one out because he's Canadian. The rest of us are all Brits. Yeah. I'm the odd one out because I'm the only one in England. Traitors, you've all gone off on your adventures.
You can always move out here if you want.
I would love to be honest. Having been on holiday the last few years, I'd be very tempted. But yeah, once COVID ends, maybe I'll come back.
There's plenty of room.
Definitely plenty of space. So, just an opener. What a really good book that you've read this year? Something that you've really enjoyed? Could be fantasy or sci-fi or anything really. What have you been reading? What's good?
Well, I'll start. In preparation for coming to Victoria, I knew that I was going to try to be BFFs with Ben Galley here. So I read his book, Chasing Graves, and much to my delight, I absolutely loved it. I could tell the way Ben praises my own work that he loved the craft of the written word. So I noticed that about his writing too, that it chose its words very carefully. Every paragraph was just absolutely fantastic. The whole idea of that series is great, and I really, really liked it, which I'm grateful for, because it would have been super awkward otherwise.
Really awkward.
Yeah.
You'd just be like, did you read it? I haven't got round to it yet. Soon. Yeah. It's been 6 months. Well, I'm a slow reader.
Yeah. We have a lot of writing sessions together, so this way we can both be writing as opposed to me being like, what are you doing there? Fumbling through whatever you're doing, whatever you call that book.
Writing some more horrid drudge.
Yeah, no, I love it.
I really appreciate that.
Chasing Graves, it was called.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, Ben, are you just now going to say, just going to say,
words, yeah.
Wild.
Bribing each other, just slide you a 20 after this. I randomly, apart from, I've absolutely championed Nick's works and Mike's works. I've read something this year, the one that stands out is something completely non-fantasy, which is a book on Chernobyl, which I'm not sure, but it's either the book that was turned into the HBO award-winning kind of doc. Either way, it just follows it kind of shot for shot, but it's fantastic as a read, and it was really kind of literally a lot of science heavy, a lot of kind of really difficult to pronounce names, and kind of heavy on the detail, but it really told kind of the Chernobyl story as if it was kind of like a fiction book with that sort of prose. Really enjoyed it. Fascinating, horrifying as well. Lots of kind of sad details to that, and obviously the ramifications. But just a fascinating read. Couldn't put it down. Haven't read a book that fast in a couple of years.
Sounds like grimdark to me, but
it is. Yeah.
Pretty
nice
grim.
Cool.
Mike,
what
have you been reading?
Midnight in Chernobyl.
Lots and lots actually. I think my favorite this year has been Shadow of the Gods by Gwynne, which I thought was just a masterclass in everything that I like. Tough women going on quests and chopping people's heads off and all that kind of stuff, and dragons. And then Fonda Lee's Jade City and Jade War, I think it's just an incredible series, and I'm trying to get ready for the third book of that coming out. And then Miles Cameron's Artifact Space, which I listened to the audiobook, which was a brilliant thing, and I was just in awe. There was a scene where people were just talking about drinking rum, and I just thought, how can he write this well? It was just so fascinating and brilliant. So they're my top picks.
Of course, he was in the Navy, which I didn't realize until I spoke to him. And I'm like, what? And he was explaining life, how he'd been on an aircraft carrier and translated things through and carried it through into space. And I was just listening to him.
He makes me laugh because he's always like, this is top secret. You can't tell anyone. And then 2 minutes he's on a stage going, this is top secret. You can't tell anyone. And then every interview since he's gone, this is top secret.
Well, sorry, I've just got a speck of Osama bin Laden's blood on my collar. I can't tell you about it.
Yeah, I can't tell you where I've been, but just in case.
Yeah. What about you, Stephen?
Yeah, I bet he's on lists.
yeah, he probably is. Watch list. Yeah. I read Catherine Arden's Winter Night trilogy, starting with The Bear and the Nightingale. And I heard lots of people talking about it, and I thought, all right, I'll check it out. And I read the first one, and it was amazing. It's the best book I've read this year. It feels, when you're a kid and you read like tales of, myths and legends and folklore and from all around the world, it was like I was 12 years old reading a book like that again. And it was so, so good. And she weaves facts and fiction and Russian folklore and myths together with some real history. And then I think it's in the back of the third book. She's like, why did I do this? This is really hard with real events. But it's amazing. I've burned through the trilogy in 6 months. Just kind of, I was going to wait till Christmas. Yeah, no, I've just read the lot. So they're so, so good. So yeah, and that was like her first series, I think, as well.
It was,
Amazing stuff.
I should be remiss if I didn't mention the audiobook to The Wisdom of Crowds, the final book in Joe Abercrombie's latest series, which was just ridiculous. Like, I already thought he was one of the greatest writers out there, but this was it cemented the deal. It's stupidly good, and the narration is beyond belief. Like, I've read every Joe Abercrombie book until the last two, and then once I listened to one, I was like, I don't think I can ever go back.
Stephen Pacey, isn't it? Does all of the voiceover narration.
Yeah, and he wouldn't be ideal necessarily for every book, but he's ideal for that book. Yeah.
I did an event with Joe about 2 or 3 weeks ago at the Birmingham store for Wisdom of Crowds and stuff. So that was quite fun, hearing him talk about it and hearing how his mom is his toughest critic still.
Yeah.
She's the arbiter of truth. If she likes it, then it's
good. Yeah.
It's good. If she doesn't, he's like, well, better listen to my mom. She knows what she's talking about. So who are your beta readers? Who are your kind of go-tos for your books when you read it and you're like, you want to know if they think it's good or not?
Well, my dad's read everything that I've written first, and after he read We Are the Dead, he actually rang me up and said, "Are you okay?" Is there anything you want to talk about? I'm really worried about you. Is this really what's going on inside your head? So yeah, no, he gets to read it, but he just says I'm a genius every time, so it's fine.
Oh, take that.
The best kind of beta reader.
Yeah, Nick, what about you? Who reads your stuff?
I've got two, at least looking for Nick nowadays. My brother reads everything with me. He's a bit of like a yes man. He's more the kind of person that he'll say what's really awesome, so that if I'm second guessing myself, I won't take out the things that he thinks are awesome, and I can know that everything else is up for grabs. And then I have a friend named Eugene who kind of he's a very critical reader. And he's also, a bit of a yes man too sometimes, but he's not afraid to like pick apart a scene and say, why do the characters do this? Why do the characters do this? I mentioned he recently started reviewing for Grimdark magazine, and I think they had to tell him to tone it down a little bit because he was like eviscerating people. He just doesn't have it in your head to like be nice. He's just like, what's wrong with this? And even books that he loves. He recently read a book by Kevin Hearn. He loved the book. And he's like, as a reviewer, I do have to find something wrong with it. So he just nitpicks something wrong with it. So he's a good person to have on your side too, I think.
Yeah. Ben, who reads your stuff?
I've got some trusted readers that I have just kind of been with me from the start, from book one or at least book 2 or 3. And so, yeah, I really trust them in terms of to be kind of, I don't know, excited about the book and be sort of a yes man and yes people, but at the same time, kind of know my style enough to know or to tell me when I'm sort of going off piste or I need to focus on this bit or that bit. And they're great with plot as well. They always kind of think of something in this world which I might not have shown yet, and they're like, "What happened to this?" And I thought, I forgot about that person. I thought I'd killed them off, for example. So yeah, they're very kind of good on the detail and stuff. And otherwise, in the kind of early stages, it's my long-suffering girlfriend Rachel, who's kind of like, I don't know, I just throw ideas and just complain out loud about plot points that I don't think are marrying up, or what should I do with this character. Those sorts of things and the details that you're kind of struggling with as you go through the book. She's always there, just like, yep, and just being a sounding board, which is great. Yeah, very good.
Having
that, very patient.
Yes, that she is suffering.
That's it, and that's the thing. She loves fantasy and stuff, but she likes kind of maybe I'm gonna say Harry Potter in a way, that sort of thing, and Lord of the Rings, and the commercial stuff. No offense at all. He's probably listening to me. But in terms of like the kind of the grimdark fantasy or the dark and epic fantasy and the secondary world stuff we do, it's not really a cup of tea. So she's a great sounding board for that respect, and just saying like I'm going on about dragons for like 2 hours, and she's like, okay, yeah, very patient.
Yeah, if I try that, I get like 10 minutes of, oh, right, yeah. And after a while, are you still going on about this? It's just like,
are we still talking about an elf? Yeah, we are.
I don't even think I'd get 10 minutes.
Really? Yeah.
If I tell you it's good, will you go away?
Yes. Yeah.
These are the only conversations you could have with other writers. Like you go to conventions and you sit. This is apart from last month, I went to FantasyCon, which is the first convention in 2 years. But this is the closest we get when you have these conversations with people, and most people are just kind of like, "Oh God, right, fine, yes." After a while, they just don't get it. But other writers, you sit there and you nitpick about these things, and it's important to us, but other people just like,
agreed.
Really? Is it important that a still suit actually goes in the nose? Does it have to? Yes. Why? Why is it important? Drives me mad. Well, have we all seen June? Have we seen June? Have we read June?
Did not sneak away, Mike.
No, I haven't seen it, and I spent money on a collector's hardback, convinced that I was going to read it, and it's sitting on my shelf looking pretty. I thought I'd wait
with the teal pages painted.
I don't know where it is, but yeah, it came out about a year ago. Really beautiful cover and stuff.
Gorgeous.
But I was actually, if this live, I wasn't planning on sneaking out to go and see it. So work. But hopefully I'll get to go and see it soon.
Oh, Ben, have you seen it?
No spoilers then. Yes, I have. I did. I went I basically took the last seat in the theatre or cinema at 10:15 p.m. on Friday night, the day it came out. And yes, it was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. It was, I do have a few little, there's one gripe I've got with I'm trying not to include any spoilers for anyone watching or Mike, but the bagpipes. 20,000
Yeah. I get why they did it, but it's like,
it's good.
Yeah, it was a bit.
I love the bagpipes. Best bit of music in the whole movie, and that's saying something because it had phenomenal music, but the bagpipe music was awesome. And I, like any human being, can't stand the sound of them in real life, but they were amazing.
Apologies to any Scottish viewers.
Just kidding.
It takes a lot of skill, doesn't it? Yeah.
I was thinking about this because I read June the first time when I was about 10 or 12 or 14 years old, and now I'm at the age where I'm thinking there are a couple of books that I wish I had written just because of the impact on me, and one of them is June, and the other one is I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. I don't know if you've read it, but it's one of these. It's just a lean book. It's really tight prose, and the end is just like a gut punch. But which books do you wish that you had written? Something that's really important to you, or special, or
I'll let
Mike?
Ben answer this one first.
Oh, right, Ben.
I was just trying to think. I think when I first read The Blade itself,
Interesting.
Joe Abercrombie, I just think that was. I think it was one of the times I really realized how do I put this? Was inspired by the real blend of humor and just brutal. I wouldn't say like splatter, gore, but in terms of it's visceral. And it was such a fun book, and I don't know, it's one of my favorites, and I just kind of wish I could write that in general. But wish I had written in terms of how it's gone down, of course, with the readers, but also just the way it's written. It's fantastic. Other than that, I'd say the book that kind of got me back into writing, which isn't kind of diehard fantasy. So I grew up reading Lord of the Rings, as everyone does, was obsessed with just epic fantasy and the genre as a whole. And then I kind of fell away from it and got back into writing through American Gods by Neil Gaiman. And that was kind of the moment, again, just seeing what you could do with fantasy in modern setting, but also just more of a magical realism setting. And I just found it fantastic in terms of the blend of mythology and just, the way the characters are kind of obviously his take on mythology as well. Loved every bit of it. And then, it got me straight back into writing actually in 2010. So that's just one of those books that I think is just bow down to that book. Not everyone's cup of tea, like I said, not
I love
fantasy,
it.
but
It's good. It's really good.
Yeah, it really inspired me. So that was always favorite that will stick with me.
Mike, have you thought of something?
Yeah, no. Well, now I know what Ben said. I love the blade itself. That was genius. No, I remember when I was about 14, 15 reading Shogun by James Clavell. And that I just thought was this just incredibly epic experience that opened up this sort of love for Asia and Japanese culture and stuff that's followed me through. And then the book that got me back into fantasy was I picked up a David Gemmell, Legend and Wayland. There were 3 in one. And I hadn't read fantasy in years at that point. I have no idea why I picked it up. And that just, clicked that switch back in your brain again. And I thought that was amazing. And I just love his work. I mean, after a while, it was the same big guy with an axe and an archer and the plucky woman going through. But he had a form of it. He knew how to work it well.
Yeah, he did. Nick?
Well, for me, anyone who's talked with me for longer than 5 minutes knows that my favorite writer is Guy Gabriel Kay. So obviously, every single Guy Gabriel Kay book I wish that I'd written. I'd settle for a sentence of his. But in more modern books, like something like Fonda Lee's Jade City, obviously it's such a cool setting, such amazing characters, and she, has written some just exquisite scenes. Like I remember one in the first book where a character is reminiscing about their violent past. Well, something violent on TV is the explosions and fires, like reflecting in picture frames of their past around the room. And I was just that this is ridiculous, like to set that up and to pull it off. And then books like Gideon the Ninth. I love audiobook those as well, and they're great audiobooks, but they kind of they remind me of what kind of stuff you can get away with in fantasy. You don't have to write like Old English or thee and thou. You can literally use, if you're, as long as you sell it and immerse, make really lean into it. You can use terms like, bite me or, memes that modern, that seem out of place in fantasy, but make them work in a fantasy or sci-fi environment. So I love her writing.
Cool.
Yeah.
I know the third book's coming out soon, isn't it? Of Von DeLee's?
The third book, it's due out really soon. I think it was delayed a bit due to all the book, everything was being pushed back due to lack of paper, apparently. But it's due out any day now. Yeah.
I used to, when I lived in Hong Kong, I lived in Ship Street, which is the address of one of the characters in Jade City.
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, yes, I know that place. But I that book just blew me away. I just think it's incredible because it's so cinematic in everything she does.
Yeah.
Nice. So let's get in some craft questions. We've got a couple of questions coming in, but one from me is, where do you start when you're creating characters? Do you have someone that fits the role, or do you build the person and then throw them into places and see what happens? So how do you kind of start? Because some people start with just the name. Some people start with the moment. Some people start with they need someone to drive this thing in the plot, and then they build people out to different aspects of the story.
I just look at my cover art, which is inevitably done long before I finish the book, and I'm like, I gotta write this person in. Yeah.
Cheating.
What is he holding there? Sword? Okay, sword. No, for me, I just kind of wing it as it goes. I don't really have any necessarily templates I'm kind of going for. At least in my work so far, I do have a character in each book that is can get away with any joke I want to put in, no matter how absurd it is. In the first book, it's a wizard named Moog, and then in the second book, it's a satyr named Roderick. And they're the person that I'm like, let me see if I can sneak this one past the editors and into the actual book. I'll just put it in their mouth. So I've got a character in the third book as well that he's just my go-to for absurd comedy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I like that.
Mike, what about you? Where do you go with your characters?
I'm obviously working on the next series after the We Are the Dead stuff at the moment. I had a drawing that I did of a character that I really loved, and for ages it's been brewing away in the background while I've been trying to finish off everything else. And then the other day I just had this kind of amazing experience where it was like, you know, the curtains opened and this movie started playing in front of me, where everything, just all these things that I've been grappling with kind of just slotted in place. And I was frantically trying to write it all down as it came to me. And you know, it's that to me is these kind of magic moments that you live for, where it doesn't feel like you're doing any work and you're just watching something unfold. But for 6-7 months, it's that I've been like, but what is happening? What is the world? And, you know, and it's been driving me mad. So it's been the payoff for that. But yeah, whenever I try and plan stuff, my characters never want to do what I want them to do. You know, I have all these like really detailed outlines and start writing, and it all goes horribly wrong.
What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I'm quite a planner. So yeah, I do more on that side of the spectrum, where I will kind of put down, okay, I'm going to have, like, the most recent one has sort of a core group, which is not quite a band on a quest, but more just like a, I don't know, like a clique within a magic school. And so then I wanted to kind of basically craft that before I started writing. And I do that. I will write out the names like Ezterau Crade and Blind Pell and et cetera, kind of give a bit of variety, make sure I'm not giving everyone a name that starts with A and stuff and things like that. And then I'll write down sort of like their moods, any inspirations for the character. So in this new book, Ezterau is kind of inspired a lot by Dr. Cox from Scrubs. Sort of like long rants and cutting dark humor and yeah, just the occasional just like sarcastic laughter right in people's faces. So yeah, heavily inspired by that. And so I kind of write these mannerisms down, bit of history, backstory, weapons, and that sort of thing. But then, yeah, like Mike, you said, I'll start writing and I'll be like, no, I'm actually this sort of character. And you didn't expect me, but here I am. Deal with me. And you got to go from there. And so normally they stick. I mean, the DNA that I sort of put into them, I would say 50 to 75% kind of maybe stays. But then, yeah, they definitely take on their own life. And obviously, as the story progresses, you find out about, more about them. One has the history needs to change or something like that. And then, yeah, most of the time, I'll do the main core, but the supporting characters will take on lives of their own. And I'll try to do that sort of like slice of life character, always that background character who's just a moron, or I don't know, just kind of people that I've run into in real life. And I was like, okay, I'll immortalize you in a book.
Are you saying you've killed off some people who've annoyed you, Ben, in the book? Is that what you're saying?
Well, maybe. Well, that's the old adage, isn't it? Don't fuck around with an author. we will immortalize you in fiction. But yeah, stuff like that. And I get a lot of fun out of, finding these random characters that just pop into my imagination unplanned, that I don't know, they kind of add more spice than I always think. And then they end up actually being proper characters. So yeah, there's a lot of discovery on top of the plan, I would say.
What about you, Stephen? You plan pretty meticulously, don't you?
Yeah. I'm like Ben. So I do beginning, middle, and end, and all the milestones of the story. I kind of do it that way, and then based upon that, I work out how the characters are going to fit and who I need. And so at the very beginning, when I did my first novel, I just kind of threw everything at the wall and see what happened, and it never came out well. And I realized, okay, I've got a plan. And once I did a book where I just didn't plan at all, and I sat down every day and just started writing, and it was the worst pile of crap that told me that this is not for me. Okay, I've really got a plan so that at least I know where I'm going. The characters, I don't know, they definitely evolve, they definitely change. And I usually find when I get to the end of a draft, I look back and go, that's not right at the very beginning, because I thought I knew who they were, and suddenly they're not that person at the beginning. Well, you kind of discovered them as you've worked through the book, usually.
So much, yeah.
Do you ever use the sort of D&D matrices, or the kind of sort of neutral evil, those sorts of things, just to kind of plan those out? I found myself doing that once or twice in that level of planning, being like, right, this person's absolutely chaotic evil, and therefore I need someone over here to balance them out. It's too much plan.
I wish I could plan better, because I end up scrapping so much stuff where you go off on a complete tangent and realize you got wrong and got to backtrack it again. I'm desperately trying to get better at it. It's just a killer.
Yeah, I think I tend to maybe just get my characters into conversations with each other, and as they learn about each other, I kind of learn about them in the process. And yeah, just like, oh, this person had a dark past. Whoopsie.
Yeah, dialogue actually is probably a place where that happens quite a lot, actually, because I think I know how a conversation goes, but then somehow it doesn't. I don't know how it happens, but yeah, and that's what we find out. Right, this person actually has to, I don't know, yeah, like you said, have a dark past or have a formal voice or have this sentence structure. I don't know.
Do you ever find you've written something, like you've thrown something in and you don't know what it means, and you have to go away and think about it? Because I've done that before. Like, I've written a line about a character because it felt good in the moment. I moved past it, and then look back the next day and I go, well, what does that mean? I haven't worked it out.
Like what? Do you remember the line?
Jowls of a horse.
So in the first, I can't remember. I don't know. In one book, in first, I think it's in Battle Mage or the second one, there was a story about a serial killer, and when I handed it to my editor, she was like, "Well, this is quite interesting. It doesn't really fit with the rest of the book." I'm like, "Oh, you're right." But I thought it was quite good. I thought it was a serial killer, so I took that out and I think toned it down and made it something else. But it just came to me. I watched a lot of Dexter. Maybe that was it.
Could be.
Stuff in the moment killed me, influenced me. Yeah. Oh, we've had a question from Kelly. Kelly's asked, how do we all define magic realism?
I knew I shouldn't have said magic realism.
But you said it, so you've got to go first now.
Yeah.
What is magic realism, Ben?
Well, I mean, I could be wrong. For me personally, and it's just the way that I've seen it, American Gods and Neil Gaiman's work and other similar authors described as the sort of the element. People are going to be Googling now, and I'll be like, so wrong. It basically, kind of a bit less secondary world fantasy and more kind of maybe in the real world or, a real sort of period of history that has magic overlaid into it or infused into it. To therefore change the world up, change the characters, or a substrata of the world itself, like Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, where the world has no idea, or even Harry Potter as well. So yeah, that's kind of how I understand the definition of that kind of subgenre. I know it changes. I'm going to get my excuses in now before someone comes up with the real answer.
Yeah, I would say the same. It's like basically a real world that's just infused with tiny bits of magic. Haruki Murakami does it very well as well. Just like a guy will be going about his day, having coffee, smoke a cigarette, and then like a goat will start talking to him. So depends on what you're smoking.
I was about to say, I think that happened on Tuesday.
Yeah. Is that the goat outside 7-Eleven?
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. Mouthy little bugger.
Yeah.
Yeah. So would Dresden Files count as magic realism?
I would say that's more urban fantasy only because it really embraces the magic. It likes magic, and no one really denies it that's involved in the world.
Yeah.
Whereas, magic realism, I feel like it's a bit more subtle than Dresden.
Sorry,
go ahead.
I'm terrible at interrupting people.
Go ahead, Mike.
That's my superpower. No, I just like, because my thing about magic is I don't really want to know how it works. And I'm just wondering who here is into the nitty gritty of explaining, the science behind the magic. Because, it's like my iPhone. I know what my iPhone does, but I don't know how it does those things. Mm-hmm. But I kind of like magic to be a bit on that kind of mysterious level. But Ben's been working out alphabets and all that sort of stuff.
I saw your latest post. You're like, here's the alphabet.
And this wasn't leading to you in any way, Ben.
Not picking on Ben.
No, that alphabet was it's a pure example of expert procrastination. I like to say, where I'm just like, it's work, it's the book, but it's not going to feature in the
writing adjacent.
That's it, 100%.
Drawing detailed maps, that counts as well.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Researching or just looking at fantasy cover art and thinking, well, this could work for my cover, that sort of thing as well. That's definitely writing adjacent. Yeah.
Nick,
but yeah, I am sort of I was going to say
I forgot
there was a question in there. In terms of the kind of the magic system stuff, I do. Nick and I were chatting about this literally the other day in terms of I just really admire the sort of kind of I would say almost limitless kind of way that you include magic in your books, Nick, and anything can happen. There's this type of magic, that type of magic, all sorts of different monsters and creatures, and I just think I find it so free And it's something I definitely want to write in, but I always, for some reason, find myself, adding, I wouldn't say formulaic, and it's not as kind of hard magic as some systems can be, but I've definitely gone there where I've got an appendix at the back of my book, which is like, this is how it works. If you drink this blood, it gives you this power, and things like that. But yeah, I don't know why. It just seems to happen. It's probably the OCD control freak in me. But yeah, I just find it fun.
Nick?
Yeah, I think both types can work, and I love reading both types. As Ben said, I've only written the one. You call it limitless, I call it lazy. It's just like, hey, you want food out of a hat? Sure. Yeah. You want to teleport? Great. Makes it easy. But I do love reading books where it's like a very defined magic system where there are rules in nitty gritty, like something like, although it's still a bit nebulous, but something like The Witcher, where he has to have very certain like potions and incantations and hand signs to make something work. I really like that. And so, yeah, it's something that, like as I said to Ben, I would love to try my hand at it someday. And I love reading it. And then at the same time, there's a certain, freedom to writing, especially, but reading too, thing where the magic is left on a little bit mysterious.
Yeah. I mean, like you, I like the Witcher stuff because you don't fully understand how it works, but you get the principles of it.
Yeah.
I'm not someone that likes the really detailed magic. It's like sci-fi. I don't like hard sci-fi because it feels like I'm just reading a NASA space manual. I want the story in the world and I want the expanse. I want that stuff. It's not so detailed that I'm just kind of bogged down. But I also like when you don't know how it works. So in like Peter McLean's Priest of Bones and that sort of stuff, I asked him, I said, is it defined? Do you understand? He's like, no. And I don't want to know. It scares people. And so he hasn't planned it out. And it's weird and mysterious and it freaks people out. And that's the point. And he doesn't know how it works, really. There's rules he's probably got behind the system, behind the scenes somewhere, but he hasn't planned it to the nth degree. And that's really good because we don't know what's going to happen. He probably doesn't know until he gets to the moment.
It works, whatever he's doing.
Yeah. 100%.
What about monsters? I know you both, quite a few of you have written some monsters, Ben and Nick. So because you mentioned it, Ben, tell me about dragons. Is the dragon your favorite fantasy monster?
Well, this dragon right here.
Yeah, that one.
Yes, it's. I'm one of these people that actually thought, and you can tell me all you want about fossil records and people finding bones and incorporating them into the into their stories. I'm convinced they actually existed. I'm that much of a dragon fanatic. But yeah, they probably would be, but they are very closely followed by a couple of, I would say, monsters that do get some attention, but maybe not as much as they deserve. Minotaurs, for example. I love the idea of having minotaurs just in the worlds. I've thrown them in as kind of sort of background characters here and there and things like short stories and stuff. There's always something minotaur shaped. Otherwise, griffins as well. I always griffins play a huge part in the Emaneska series and the New Scouts Chronicles, and it's just something about I don't know, it's probably growing up with my dad bird watching that I've got like an affinity for anything with wings and feathers. And so, there's something about griffins. And I don't know, when I started writing one, I was just like, I'll just throw one in. And it just, again, like we're talking about characters, took on a life of its own. And so that obsession was quick to rise up. Otherwise, I've written about golems, horrible spider creatures in the new one. I like mixing this kind of monster with that kind of monster, twisting the tropes as well, like minotaurs who are scared of things. That's always fun because you imagine them to be big and burly. Why not have them as an absolute coward or something?
Sorry, Nick's just got to go and take a call.
It's his neighbour causing
his agent's like, don't talk about book 3, okay?
Don't say anything about the monsters in book 3 now.
Remember the NDA.
Excuse me, I'm a very popular person.
What monsters do you like, Mike? And what's your favourite?
Everyone loves a dragon, don't they? I just don't know. At the moment, I don't feel confident enough I could do a dragon in a new and different way where I wouldn't just be ripping off everyone else's. The monsters in my book have all been kind of genetically twisted humans that have had awful things done to them to turn them into even more horrible creatures. But yeah, I mean, like I love Nick's stuff. I think that's just like imagination gone crazy, isn't it? You walk into the woods and whatever you want is suddenly going to pop down in front of you. I think that's incredible. But I don't know if you get that kind of like, I've used every monster up in the world now. Like, what can I do? I've got to have that chicken dragon mix come in and gobble everyone up. Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah.
Stop going through the books.
Yeah,
Nick,
I mean,
you've got
definitely
some
like
good books.
for a long time, I kind of grew out of them, or so I thought. All the fantasy I was reading didn't have them, and I didn't want to read books with them, and then I just kind of, it came back around, and now I'm embraced them, and I love seeing people's takes on them. I mean, a lot of people probably think the owlbear is my favorite monster, but it's really not. In my second book, I was writing this big scene with the dragon, and I was just like, but I've done a dragon before, so what's cooler than a dragon? And I made something called the Dragon Eater, which is just bigger, that eats them. But I'm a huge fan of like giants. I think are a pretty fascinating monster because they always get depicted as being dumb, and they're so rarely you meet articulate giants. So when really they're just like larger versions of us. So why wouldn't they talk like us and act like us and and do all that kind of stuff? So I think they're kind of an untapped resource out there as far as monsterdom goes.
I really like what Jonathan French did in his Grey Bastards series, because he's got lots of weird monsters in there, and he's got my favorites in there, centaurs, which I rarely see these days. Just people don't write them, and he had them as these kind of mad, savage, bloodthirsty creatures that when the blood moon comes up, they just kind of go on a rampage and start killing everything in this frenzy. And it was brilliant. He just took something like even half orcs and made them interesting. And halflings, you think of the Hobbit and they're cute and bit kind of just short people, and he made them these creepy, weird, mysterious people that have deep magic and know stuff. And he did it so well. I loved all the kind of reinventions that he's done of just taking something and making it completely fresh with the bones of what we know.
Also, this book recently came out. So you were saying?
No, I love twisting tropes in general. I think it's fantastic. Yeah.
The book, The Black Tongue Thief, has a reference to people talk about there are all these veterans of the Goblin Wars. And, when you first think of a goblin, you kind of think of something that's goofy and small and relatively harmless, except in numbers. But he narrates these goblins and everyone that's a veteran of the Goblin Wars is like horribly maimed, mentally scarred. Like they just get this, 1,000-yard stare in their eye when they're talking about it. So by the time you meet a goblin in his book, you're just like, these things are terrifying, and they are truly, truly terrifying. Like Black Tongue Thief is a hilarious, fun, like adventure book, but it has some moments of pure horror in there because of how scary he's made goblins.
I've got it on to read. I can't wait. I can't wait to read it.
Same. Yeah.
I don't want to spoil a tug of war scene that's it's something else. It's going to stick in your head for a while.
I've heard about this scene.
Yeah, tug of war. Okay.
The tug of war scene. Yeah, I've heard about it. I can't wait to read it. I always like it when some people take the cute or the normal, like fairies, for example, and not necessarily directly book related, but for instance, the tooth fairies in Hellboy. It was a Hellboy 2. Terrifying in terms of the way that they just eat and devour people so quickly and things like that. I always like making classical kind of like friendly fantasy monsters the complete opposite. Mermaids, vicious, not really human. That's what I like.
Something bloodthirsty.
One
of your fans has stopped in, Nick, just to say that they've read The Bloody Rose and they loved it.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I
also saw that comment about Storm Dancer, and Griffins were awesome in Storm Dancer.
Yeah.
Great books.
Jay Christoph, did Griffins. But so here's a question. Everyone talks about tropes, and we talk about subverting monsters, but are there any fantasy tropes that you wouldn't consider using in a story, even if you could, subvert them, like a chosen one, or a farm boy hero, or a magic sword with a destiny, not necessarily a stone? Is that too far? Like, is there anything you wouldn't use that you'd be like, I can't do anything with that?
Which I think I haven't used to therefore think about what I wouldn't use.
You haven't done a sword with a stone with a destiny for it to be a king, though, have you?
No.
But
Got a sword on a
He
mantle.
just wrote his next book.
Yeah.
There we go. That's the next one.
Yeah. Come back to me on this one.
Mike, is there anything that you wouldn't want to do just because you don't think you'd be like, I don't know.
I just think you got to do it in your own way. I mean, they're tropes because they're popular and people love reading about them, and they're kind of fundamental bits of story that you got to. That Captain America is interesting because Steve Rogers was wimpy and puny, and he becomes incredible. Whether that's a chosen one or not, but you need to have that kind of transformation story go on. You go into the deep dark woods and you come out a different person at the end of it. It has been done a million times, but how you do that, if you take an aging bunch of mercenaries into the woods, that are dealing with all their crises of getting old and things like that, it's incredible, and you don't notice what you're reading about. And I think that's where the magic comes in. So I love magic swords, and I love chosen ones, and I'll stick a dragon on a hill and everything else at the end of it. But you just got to do it in a cool way that gets you excited, and hopefully other people get turned on by it as well.
Nick?
I agree wholeheartedly with Mike. It's like there's no trope I would shy away from using. And I think as long as you try to put a different spin on it, you don't even necessarily have to if you write it really well. But even if you don't manage to write it well, as long as you put something, just a new twist on it. It's something I like to do in my books. If someone's in a tavern, like how is that tavern different from other taverns? If someone's in a jail, how is that jail different from other jails? I was talking about that with Ben the other day, and he's got a pretty cool jail coming up. So twisting tropes is something that I think is great, and I think it works. Is like as Mike said, they're popular for a reason. So if you can just add something to them, I think it makes for a great story.
Have you thought of something, Ben, that you haven't done?
Agreed. Just agreed on all points. No, I think, I suppose without kind of, I suppose there's a certain tropes that may be outdated, not necessarily because they're not kind of the the DNA of stories and things like that. But for instance, fridging female characters and that sort of stuff that was maybe a trope that kind of deserves to be changed or forgotten and things like that. So I mean, there's a few things I try and actively stay away from in that sort of respect. But otherwise, I think things that have probably been. I don't know. I steer away from. I don't have a lot of romance in my books. So I steer kind of away from romantic tropes if I do any sort of element of romance. So I try to do everything I can to do romance differently wherever I do it. Otherwise, I can't really think of anything I would necessarily shy away from, because a lot of my books are inspired by mythology, which obviously has a lot of these stories already combined within it, and also just fairy tales and stuff. I'm a trope whore.
What about you, Stephen?
You've got a tattoo. Right there.
That's trope whore. Well, Chris says he doesn't
Yeah.
mind tropes if they're interesting characters involved.
Exactly.
That's. I guess that's it. I mean, I always want at some point I'll probably do a chosen one trope, but do like a twist. And I thought this isn't new, but it's doing something different with it. So having chosen one that's set up, and then right at the last minute where they're supposed to like become the chosen one, they die, and the person who's been like their body servant the whole time is like, "Yep, that's me. I'll step forward." And suddenly there's no destiny, but they have to do the thing that they've watched this other person train for their entire life. And I thought that'd be interesting because that's character exploration. That's not the destiny. That's like, can this person be the person that everyone wants them to be, based on what they think that person needs them to be? So it's all kind of more. I think you'd have to do it first person, something like that. But
that is good. Yeah,
I've seen it done before. Most notably, like in a lot of anime and stuff like that. But I'd really like to explore someday, like the Dark Lord trope, like a new take on the Dark Lord trope, and how his journey goes.
Same. Yeah, literally told from that perspective as well. Yeah, I've got a tagline for a book like that I want to write, and I can't wait to write it just to use the tagline. But yeah, I always like one of the ones that I really like, and I've seen it done a couple of times, and I've done it personally myself as well. Is the big villain's speech at the end of the book, the finale, and it's like, what you didn't know all this time is I was behind this and that, and here's this little nice thread neatly tied up, and here's another nice thread neatly tied up. I love interrupting that and literally having it. So I've had a scene, hopefully it's not too spoilery, where it's the villain is launching into the speech and someone accidentally pulls the trigger of the gun that they've got pointed at them, and then just everyone sort of turns around and looks and is like, oh. I liked it. I see it done. I can't remember. I swear there's a film where just a rock falls on someone and it's just hilarious.
Do you remember in Mystery Men where they kind of go to rescue the hero and they accidentally push the button and kill him? And he's like the ultimate superhero, and they've basically killed him, and then they hide, and then the villain comes and goes, oh yes, he was going to kill him in front of everybody, but they did it by accident. So I remember that from Mystery Men, and they're like, oh no, we've just killed him, and they really didn't mean to. That was hilarious.
I do like those switch situations where you think everything is lined up to one point and it's just a complete something out of nowhere change. I find that so satisfying. Yeah.
Definitely. Here we go. Chosen One was done well in Kill the Farm Boy by Delilah Dawson and Kevin Hearn.
I've heard that, yeah. Two great writers.
Because he did Giants, didn't he? Kevin Hearn. He did
Plague
of Giants. That was one of his books, I think.
Yeah.
With different tribes of giant. Of course, Faithful and the Fallen's got Tribes of Giants in as well by John Gwynne. So he's done something different again. I don't know, maybe giants are having a comeback.
Yeah, it's done vampires. Yeah, done dragons.
The age of man is over. Let the age of giants begin.
Sparkly giants. Maybe that's the next phase.
Teenage giants.
There's something Ben won't do. Aha!
Yeah, sparkly vampires. Yeah, actually, yeah.
That's a trope you won't try and reinvent.
Well, actually,
Not you see.
I was going to say my first book has actually all the books I've written in the M&S series have a vampire character in, and that was because it was written in 2010 at the height of the sort of just a vampire, just Twilight, and copycats here and copycats there, or just people being inspired by it. And so I was like, no, screw this. I'm going to have this just bookish, boring yet secretly amazing, lovable vampire that absolutely does not sparkle. And I'm going to have him fight a werewolf as well, who is not that werewolf. So yeah, I did put a vampire and a werewolf alongside my dragons in my first book, just to say that Twilight. So yeah.
Yeah, Kelly's put vampires don't sparkle.
Thank you. Real vampires don't sparkle. Yeah,
I agree. They really, really don't. Really don't. Here's a question from Phil. Do you listen to music and you write? And if so, what genres or artists?
It's definitely a Nick question, then, isn't it? I mean,
well,
you've got a Spotify list, haven't you?
I think there's very few people that don't listen to music while they write. I'm sure I know a few of them that don't, but I used to put on like epic playlists. On YouTube, you find that 6-hour epic playlist, then you can find an 8-hour one, then a 10-hour one, and then I write for 15 minutes, and I'm like, yeah, that's done. But yeah, during Kings of the Wild, I listen to 70s rock a lot, which is easy to write to because it's long, rambling, epic songs. I tried that with Bloody Rose, and it just wouldn't work because when Guns N' Roses is wailing at you, it's just like, okay, I get it. Shut up. So I switched over to like synthwave, which still has that 80s vibe. And one of the songs made it on the soundtrack, but I think it's great music to write to because it's got its calm moments and it's got its epic moments. And then the same goes for 90s. You can't really listen to, Nirvana or Rage Against the Machine while you write necessarily, unless you just want to write "fuck you, I won't do it, you tell me" 80 times on the page.
That's my note to my editor. No.
Yeah.
and then I write back going, of course I will. I'm really sorry.
Yeah. Reject, alteration, reject, change.
Yeah. So I usually put something on these days. It's like either like lo-fi or just anything that's like not in your face, drag you away from the page.
Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I love music. To be honest, I kind of need something on whenever I write. And so yeah, it's pretty much 80 to 90% of the time I'm writing, I've got some sort of music on. I switch between, I come from like music in general, so I switch between metal, for some reason, the louder the metal, well, not louder, more frenetic. And for instance, Kill Switch Engage is one of my like perfect writing kind of, I don't know, vibes, I would say. And so I can just put most of their albums just on repeat, just back, or on loop rather, and just listen to it, and it just fades out into almost kind of white noise in a good way, white noise that I like. So yeah, for some reason I can do it with certain bands of that ilk. Otherwise I'm listening to film music, a lot of like Thomas Newman, a lot of kind of just lyricless stuff in the background that sets a mood, a scene. Doug Kaufman, Thomas Newman, and yeah, just kind of various stuff like that. Otherwise, I've got quite an eclectic taste, so I couldn't list them all. But those are the two main sort of areas I go for, which are completely different, but either work for me.
Cool. Mike, what about you? Do you write with music?
It was weird. When I started writing We Are the Dead, I put on, for the first time in probably decades, the Joshua Tree by U2. And because I knew it so well, it didn't really matter that it had lyrics on, but for some reason it just fitted that kind of headspace that I needed to be in. And then whenever I was struggling, I kind of just would put that record on again. It got me straight back into the world.
Very cool.
But I can procrastinate for days trying to find the right playlist and the right music to listen to. So now I've been listening to Brain FM. They've got a creative mode thing where it just sends electronic pulses into your brain and blocks everything else out, and that I find amazing. I can be like super productive with that going on, but I can't write with silence at all.
What about you, Stephen?
So most of the time I write with music, and like Ben, it's a lot of Thomas Newman, Hans Zimmer, and everything has to have, it can't have lyrics. I've got a lot of soundtracks. Most recent one I bought the other week was the new Dune soundtrack by Hans Zimmer, and before that, like Marco Polo soundtrack from the Netflix show. I've got 5 scenes of Battlestar Galactica by Bear McCreary, all that kind of thing.
Yes.
So
that's a good soundtrack.
So if you're trying to write a battle scene, or I want to get energized, I'll put on, like one of the Bears song that's like 8 minutes long, and you're like, okay, here we go, and it's just kind of mental arithmetic. There you go. The original.
I love Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
The original, or did you like, or both? Do you like the new?
I can't get the other one. I do have some more floating around there.
Okay,
that's fantastic. I love that show. I think, and again, I think that's a great example of taking something that you all know and just twisting it in the right way and making it incredible. And the music's fantastic.
Yeah. Normally, occasionally, I'll write with silence, but I think one question I was going to ask is: do you think it gets easier writing books as you go? Because I don't think it does. Because on my last one, I broke all of my own rules. So like I put music on, I sit down at the same desk, and I start writing. And then I started working on the new book, and it wouldn't work. And I kept changing things to try and work out what it was. And one day I turned music off, and I was fine. I'm like, oh, this doesn't work normally, but it worked. And so I kept doing that. And then I always work forward to the end of a draft. I never go back. And I started going back and changing things. I'm like, oh my God, why am I doing this? But it was working. So does it get
I found this with the new book. Yeah, well, I would, if you'd asked me before this new book, I would have said maybe. Now I'm going to say no. The most recent one has been really challenging to write, difficult in places. And I don't know whether it's because I did something different or I have to do something different. I'm not quite sure whether it's a necessity or not. But in terms of, I'm still writing to music and stuff, but I'm doing a bit more of discovery writing in between the plot. So, for instance, I kind of had a wide open end. I kind of planned maybe act 1 of 3 or 4, maybe a bit into 2, and then just went, let's go for this, and sort of, right. And I found it difficult, really difficult. But again, it's kind of the way I needed to write this book. So I think it changes. And I found, I did find Skeleton pretty difficult to kind of be a sequel as well as an entry point as well. So that was a challenging book to write. So I don't know, maybe it's the not skill, but maybe kind of the easiness would be going up if I weren't trying to write unnecessarily difficult books or do something. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Mike, how did you find writing book 3 of the trilogy? You know,
it nearly killed me, but it was really, really difficult on lots of levels. But I think I always hope that writing will get easier with each book you do, but I find it gets harder and harder, and I think that's just because maybe your skill level's going up and you're pushing yourself to try and do different things and explore different types of characters that aren't, the first book I wrote had every cliche going, and the difficulty there was just writing a book and finishing it. And then you start trying to work out how can you make characters interesting and different, and God help me, but when you're doing a trilogy with 8 points of view that have all got their own stories going on and different time periods, and like it's just a recipe for a breakdown. I mean, it's just and I don't know if any of you do this, but you write that first book and you do your pitch for the next in the series. I didn't know if I was going to really write them. I didn't know if anyone was going to buy it. And then they did. And by the time you get to the third book, you're just like, what have I done? That map that I drew just because I wanted to draw a map, I've now got to have a full-scale war going on. And how do they get places and do these things? And, it's just difficult. But I think the moment you sit there and go, this is really easy, you've got to question whether you've done something good or whether you're just knocking something out for the sake of doing it. And I think you've always got to push yourself to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Nick?
Yeah.
Well, that hardens me to hear, because in that case, I'm on the right track. I'm not finding it easy whatsoever. So this must be a real banger, this third book.
Oh, yeah.
It's definitely been a hard process for me. The second book was much harder than the first. And the third book is much harder than the second. So I don't know. And I can't really say what it is. It's maybe you get more nitpicky about stuff. In my case, it's not so much like, because my books are essentially standalones, but have an overarching plot, like a through line. It is maybe difficult to find a balance between, you have to start fresh with all new characters and a whole new, the world's changed in the last decade or so. So you have to reintroduce all these ideas again, but at the same time, bring these through lines into it, and try to make it all mesh together. And then there's certain things, like I know for me, my first 2 books they both have sort of a sentimental hook in the first 3 or 4 chapters. And so, I keep trying to do that again. And maybe it's not, it's something that I found that maybe I don't need this time around, but we'll see. So I definitely, and I think I've heard a lot of people say it gets difficult, or at least stays the same. If it gets easier for anyone, then I envy them.
I think when we all start out originally, we're just kind of fueled by enthusiasm and excitement, and we don't really know much, and we just kind of go for it. And then the more you get into it, the more you learn about building characters and proper narration and structure and world building and just kind of weaving it together, you start to worry about these things more. Whereas at the beginning you didn't. You were just writing the story because you wanted to write the cool story. Oh, this is cool. And you just blast it out, and then you edit it, but you're not thinking about the things in the same way. And I never want to repeat myself, so I'm always challenging myself. So the current one I'm writing is a nightmare, to be honest. It's the hardest book I've ever done. I think it's good, but I think it's the most difficult one. I've not got like 12 points of view or something, but I've done things I've never done before, and I've pushed myself, and because I just don't want to be like, oh, he's the guy that does that thing every time. And I'd be like, well, no, but okay.
I worry about that.
But when I was writing book 3, at the end of book 2, not everyone survived, and I was like, oh, thank goodness, I've just got 5 people now to concentrate on. And then the first chapter I start writing is this completely random character that had a walk-on part in book 2, who then, and you're like, what am I doing? And now suddenly that's like 6 characters, and then end up being 8 again. So next book I do is 1 point of view.
First person for you next time.
Yeah,
exactly.
Even when I did first person, like with Chasing Graves, I couldn't help it and put another 5 different third person POVs just surrounding it. I don't know what happened.
Oh,
Yeah, that was fun. And then the most recent one that's launched, Heavy Lies the Crown, which is book 2, big quest story. And again, I don't know why I do it to myself, but I found I had a huge siege storyline where everyone gets kind of separated at the end. But then I had a group of about 8 to 9 different characters on one side, and then a group of 6 different characters on another side. And instead of keeping one still and having the other one doing the quest, I set them both on their own quests that sort of do this. And I got all the way through, well, not all the way through, halfway through, and I was like, why the hell have I done this to myself? Because every chapter, once you go back, has to be a different POV. I thought, oh, yeah, I don't know. It's almost like this weird sort of masochistic side of our subconscious. So like, we need to push ourselves into increasingly more difficult circles, but yeah, still the best job in the world.
yeah. I do enjoy the process. I know some people say they like having written and then editing it, but I think I find editing the toughest part. What about you? How do you feel about editing?
I mean, my editing, I've only done it twice, but it's been the easiest thing in the world to me, to be honest, only because I think I tend to, it takes me so long to draft. And by the time I draft, granted, I am going to change things again a lot, but only nitpicky things, only like the amount of syllables in a sentence, not necessarily the sentence itself. And so I tend to take so long drafting that I mean, so far, knock on wood, but the time I'm done, it's usually in a fairly polished state. So editing is just a matter. It's the easiest thing in the world. It's just cleanup where all the hard work's been done. But I know I'm very, like most people, I think, draft and then do it all the hard work in the second time around. So I think I'm an anomaly there.
I mean, I always joke that I only write one draft, but that draft's got like 500 versions. I jump back and edit as I write, and because I just can't keep going forward if I know I have to fix something. But the bit I love is after I sent it to my editor and I get their notes back, as long as I don't say it's crap. It's like, oh, it works and it's a good story, because that's what plagues me, this fear of what I'm writing isn't any good and no one's going to enjoy it and it doesn't make sense. So once that's gone, I can then attack the edit with confidence of this is just about making it better. And you've got really smart people telling you, like, make it more painful here and, break their hearts over here a bit more and things like that. And that's where the fun comes into it for me.
I'd agree. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I would say, yeah, I'm actually on that stage right now. So I'm just going through basically halfway on the edit. And that is, I've left. Thing is, because I write kind of cleanly, I would say, even though I do go back and edit maybe the paragraph or two, sometimes kind of not too much, not extensively, but just have a look through and kind of tidy a few things up from the last day or previous writing sesh and then go forward. And I do kind of make sure that I'm writing, for instance, I won't do sprints or anything where like for instance, I can't leave a mistake unless I don't see it or I don't know it's there. I'll have to correct the mistakes and sort of thing as I go through. So I do end up with a reasonably clean manuscript, and then I go through basically one big draft where I'm kind of rewriting, I wouldn't say most sentences, but probably the majority sentence, or at least half the sentences. I'm kind of rewriting chunks, but not whole chapters and things like that. So it's quite enjoyable, I'd say, because it is like cleanup, as Nick said. But I am still going through the doubt, because that's kind of, I know I don't normally engage my beta readers until the stage after that. So I'm still, and again, this is the trouble I'm having with this most recent one, is I don't know if it's good. I spent too long staring at the words and just kind of worrying about it and going between different ideas. And even though I'm writing or co-writing this one with David Estes, so I do have someone to kind of check in with and who's reading it chapter by chapter. It's got to the point where I'm just like, I don't trust you, David Estes. I don't trust my mind.
What does he want? Why is he saying this?
It's like, of course I trust him, but now it's like, well, you're too close to the project now, so now we need to also move to the editor and beta stage. And I just it's the way of removing your mind from those kind of like patch of worry that you get stuck in. But otherwise, it's a really enjoyable process, and I like the polishing aspect of it, and also seeing where you're like, I had maybe a couple more beers that night than I should have, and what the hell was I writing in this section? And yeah, finding little bits that sparkle as well that you can just polish up. It is really fun. Yeah,
well, I guess I'm not as odd as I thought I was. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're the weird one, Stephen.
Apparently I am. Apparently so. I mean, I do a draft, I revise it and over and over again, and then it goes to usually my agent's probably the first person to read it, and then it's just I get notes from her, and then I get notes from my editor. But I get to the point sometimes, like you, Ben, I've been staring at this current book for so long, I'm just bored of reading the same sentences over and over. I'm just like, oh God, and now I'm bored with it. But someone else is reading, oh, this is good. I'm like, oh, is it? Tell me why.
What?
Tell me more. Yeah.
What is this you speak?
You need that external input. You need that kind of, sometimes if you've been deep in something for so long, you need someone else to point out something to you that you just can't see anymore. You just skipped over it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So who's chunked the worst amount? Because Mike said you chucked out a huge amount of words. How many words have you lost before?
Yeah. I scrapped.
Oh, he's back. Oh, Mike's frozen.
We're all. Am I back?
Yeah, I think you're back.
I can hear you.
Go on.
Yeah,
you're back.
Am I back? Oh, okay. Book 2, I scrapped 2 drafts at 65,000 words each, and started again. And I think I did something not quite as bad on the third one, but I did scrap something, 50, 60k in and started again.
Oh, I think I literally just had a palpitation.
Yeah, and that's why I've got to try and find some way of not doing that. It's that's why I need to work on my planning. But so much of it you discover while you're writing these stories, and it's really funny. Someone wrote a review of book 1 while I was working on book 3, and they mentioned a character that was a throwaway character in book 1 that I'd forgotten. It literally was a line I just wrote and threw a name in it, and they said, "Oh, I wonder if so and so is going to be," and I was like, "Oh, so and so," and now they're actually a major part of book 3, and it was actually that kind of spine I needed to make everything work. And I probably owe that reviewer, a bottle of something, but thank you. So.
Yeah.
So
I'm trying to think, because I did in writing this new book with David, I did start writing another one, and then it got basically I started off too complicated, and I just thought, right, no, this is not the book I need to write or want to write. I don't have kind of as much passion as it deserves behind it. So we switched to this new book, Demon's Reign. And I think, obviously, I haven't thrown it away, but it's probably not going to get used. So yes, it might get recycled. But that, I think we got up to 25 or 30,000. So that's not too bad. But yeah, I know. Yeah, it probably will be recycled as well. I might write it in the future or use one scene in a different book. Who knows? So not loss, but yeah, that was...
Never delete anything. That's my rule.
Never delete everything. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's the thing. But as I'm going through a book, I don't necessarily, if I write it, it normally stays. Most of the times, I might kind of take a chapter out here or there, or kind of rewrite a chapter. I think that's the most I've had to do, really. But yes, it's always starting something that doesn't end up or go anywhere. I do that a lot.
Nick, how about you?
I've definitely scrapped way more words than I've ever written than I've ever kept. Granted, I'm sure it goes for a lot of people, but I wrote this giant 350,000 word book before Kings of the Wild that I worked on for like 10 years meticulously, rewriting it, editing it, like splitting it in half, making it functional. It'll never see the light of day. And then luckily with Kings of the Wild, it was bing, bang, boom, done. With Bloody Rose, though, I got about halfway through and changed the gender of the main character. So that necessitated writing every scene over from scratch, pretty much. And then about 3/4 of the way through, I rewrote the first 3 chapters, which gave that emotional hook. And that changed everything about the character. So I had to rewrite every single scene again over from scratch and the way the characters interacted with her and the way she interacted with characters was completely different. So I kept every single actual plot point, but rewrote every single sentence. And so with book 3, I think that's probably what I've been trying to avoid. And then because of that, my file of like false starts is the size of what the book should be when it's finished. It's about 130,000 words of false starts.
But I've never actually the start of my books has never been where I've actually started writing. It always ends up being like something in the middle. I've had to go back and realize that
that's awesome.
I need to fill it. No, it's not. It's madness.
I wish I could do it. I write the end right now. I know what happens in the end. I just take it at the beginning. That's cool. I don't know.
I sometimes add the beginning ahead of it, but that's about it. Yeah. Can't think of it up a prelude and then just kind of like bolt it onto the front of it. But yeah.
I've stripped out bits before, like subplots and things. And sometimes, I'll give it to my agent and she'll say, tighten it up a bit and maybe take out like 10 or 20K. And I do, but then I have to flesh out other things in the edit when it goes to my editor. So I end up adding like 30K. So even though I've stripped out some things, the books always grow. I think every first draft I've handed it in, and then the final thing has always been longer. I guess we're just manipulating the story and changing things around, but they never seem to shrink. Ever.
I think that's
Do you get that with short stories as well? Yeah.
Sorry, what did you say, Nick?
Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah, what did you say?
Well, I was just saying that it could probably, you write it bare bones and you can flesh stuff out as you go. I mean, I think that's definitely what I did the first book. I left out all the world building that I've been doing for, my 350,000 word epic fantasy, and just went with story and character. And then with Orbit, we added about 40,000 words after they bought it. That was just fleshing it out and making it, more real.
Nice. What were you saying, Ben?
I was just going to say short stories. I mean, I struggle with short stories. I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but I mean, there's been multiple times where someone just sent me like, yeah, we need a 5,000 word short story. And a couple of weeks or months go by and I'm like, here's 25,000 words. Do you want it? No, I mean, I exaggerate, but I think I had a 10K word limit and I had it in about 17 once, I think, which is, yeah. And that was after cutting it out as well. And I was like, I can't cut anything else out. So, yeah. Do you guys have the same issue, or do you find it easier to write short stories?
I can't do them. I've done a couple in my life, probably. And every time I start, so I recently did a short story. It's now a 40,000 word novella.
We're fancy authors. We don't do short.
I had to Google the word short.
The last book, I think I was at 75,000 words, and I was just getting warmed up. And that's a normal novel. I mean, it's just ridiculous, isn't it?
Oh my, yeah.
It's a skill. It's an absolute skill. I mean, I've spoken to Tim Pratt, and he's a master at doing short stories, and he does it. You said, tell me about this cool thing he does. He has a Patreon, and he uses it as like a sandbox. So he'll write some ideas down, like short stories, and test them out on people. And if they really like it, he'll explore them and think, is there somewhere I can go with that? And he did that with one of his short stories, and it's became his book, Doors of Sleep. And it's an awesome book, but it started out as this kind of sandbox test bed. And I thought that's a really good idea of doing it. You get useful feedback from people who go, I want to know more about X, Y, and Z. And you're like, so do I. Maybe there's something there. Maybe I could write something.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to doing that with my Patreon actually soon, because I've posed 3 ideas, very random ideas that aren't, some of them aren't fantasy, to my patrons. And yeah, I'm going to be trying to do a chapter at some interval. I'm going to say a week. That scares the crap out of me. But in any case, 2 weeks, who knows? A bit like Netflix kind of serialization. That's going to be fun. But yeah, I know a lot of authors use kind of Royal Road or Wattpad, or have at least in the past, to kind of sandbox a lot of things. And it's a fun way of writing, actually, because I mean, you've got the interest beforehand. That's going to help, surely, which I quite like the idea of.
Had some nice feedback on the novels, saying all our books are awesome. So thank you very much for Shard. Thanks for stopping by.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Nice job. Right, well, we're getting towards the end of this now. So just to kind of wrap up, let me know what are you working on at the moment? What's going on? What are you? I know what Nick's writing, but Nick, what are you writing? Tell us.
I'm writing. It's a book called Outlaw Empire. I only do that. I don't eat, sleep, play any video games, read any books, talk to any people, watch any hockey. Nothing else except that. Just kidding. I do all those things, but feel guilty about should be working on Outlaw Empire. So yeah, I'm hard at work on that. And yeah, I'm kind of lots of projects I'd like to work on, but I like to think I'm pretty good friends with my editors, and I don't want to jump into something else before I finish this, and my readers too. So
awesome. Ben, what are you up to?
I am finishing off Demon's Reign, which is the co-written book with David Estes, which is I'm very excited about, despite it kicking my backside. It's I liken it to Avatar meets Venom, basically, in a fantasy world, and so it's going to be fun. Yeah, demons and mile-high trees. Otherwise, yeah, I've got a Kickstarter launching hopefully next week, next Wednesday on the 3rd. So yeah, a lot of admin work on that, which is also kicking my ass. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And I got book 3 to write for the new series, which I have no idea when I'm going to start that one. I'm going to finish it, but it's on the to-do list.
Awesome. Mike?
Book 3 of the Last War trilogy is in copy edits. So yeah, then I get to see why I didn't write it that way in the first place when someone's properly crafted it for me. And I'm just working out the new series. I'm just doing all the world building and, all the fun thing like researching swords and working out magic and superpowers and everything else. So it's the exciting stage at the moment.
Awesome.
That's great. Congratulations on finishing that series, by the way.
Woo!
Yeah, first series done.
No, it really nearly killed me, and I was so happy to get it done and finished and it be the way it is. It's a bit like childbirth, isn't it?
Great.
Afterwards, you forget the pain and the blood and everything. You go, isn't this wonderful? This child.
You're asking the wrong crowd.
Yeah. Also, I hear from my wife. Yeah.
Exactly the same. Yes.
Yes, from personal experience, I find it's very so.
But it's great because as you said earlier, it's I actually do love writing, but I love having finished the book more. Because then I just get to enjoy it. Yeah.
Steve, what are you looking at?
The Coward is out. The sequel is written, and this book 2 in the duology is done.
Excellent.
I'll get edits back on that soon, and that comes out next year. And the first draft of a brand new book in a brand new series, totally different to everything else, is done. And this is the beast that I'm struggling with at the moment. I cut 20K as I was told to. I've now added 26K. So it's creeping up to 150. And I'm like, oh no, it's the longest I've written and the most complicated book I've ever done. Yeah.
I'm in awe. I want to be like you.
Yeah. Well, how big's your how big are your books, Mike?
Well, no. Well, the first one was. I'm not going to exaggerate. I'll be honest with you. The first one was 160. The second one was 200, and the third one was 260 or something. I think.
Whoa! Jesus. Whoa!
Yeah, that's huge.
Wow!
It's a beast.
Can I borrow 130,000 of those?
I actually have cut words of that you can have. Yeah, fine.
You just kind of split it off into a couple of other books.
I'll take them.
I need another novella for the second in the series, so I can borrow some.
Yeah. Just chip away like a rock face. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Short books.
I think I was like 200 with Forever King. That's the longest I've written, and then a friend in an author chat just. I think it was Andy Poloquin just basically said, yeah, really happy to have hit 350K on the new book.
Wow.
On one book. So, yeah, props to the big books.
Someone's getting their money's worth at least.
Is it like Justin T. Cole? His books are like beast of doorstoppers.
Yeah. I love Justin is like the complete opposite of me. I love it to death. But he has planned everything. He knows, why the wind is blowing from the east. How many leaves are in the wind. Like he knows he is just and it's like a 12-book series he's got.
Yeah, he spent like 5 years or 8 years
10 years he told me. Yeah.
There you go. And now he's writing this series of 3 books of 4 or 4 of 3.
And each book's like 400,000 words or something. You know where you're just like, I'm in awe of you. He's just a genius, and his books are brilliant.
Yeah. And speaking of explorations of Dark Lords, that's what his kind of about too.
He's a genius.
It's on my wish list, but man, they're huge. I'm gonna have to like take a month out just to focus on a couple of months, probably just to read those books.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, cool. So what are you reading now? Just to wrap up, guys. What book are you reading at the moment?
What am I reading at the moment?
I'm reading Ed McDonald's next book. It's called Daughter of Red Winter.
Nice.
I asked for that book and I haven't been sent it yet, so I'm upset that you have it. Considering he's with my publisher and not yours, it's like
bullshit.
At least you guys get sent books.
I mean, what the hell is going on?
I'm reading that right now. I really love Ed's style of writing. It's very kind of like cutthroat. It gets kind of like descriptive when it needs to be, but otherwise he's got nice short punctual sentences, and I really like it.
Book 2 and 3 I've got on the Right to Read pile. Love them.
I love them. Ed McDonald. I think everyone's a genius, but Ed's books are brilliant. They really are. And the audio books are great as well. Yeah.
What are you guys reading?
Ben, what are you reading?
Trying to figure it out. I've actually gone between books right now, so I've got a big TBR. I don't know, actually. Yeah, I've got a whole choice. I want to finish off Bloody Rose. Actually, I'll probably do that one thanks to a new signed copy I got from his truly. Nice. But otherwise, I also really want to get stuck into The Pariah, which I just got. Anthony sent me a copy very kindly, and I just really want to get into that because I just flicked to the first sentence. Well, that worked as well, but the first chapter or so, and really, really good, really nice. Sort of the kind of thing I want to read right now. So, that's pretty much it for me.
Awesome. I am reading for research The Scarlet Pimpernel at the moment, which is I've never read it. It is an insane book. And writing has come a long way in the 100-odd years since that was penned. But
nice.
Cool. I'm currently reading The Moonsteel Crown by Stephen Deez. It's really good, really kind of fast-paced. Bunch of load people down the pecking order who get into trouble that they really shouldn't have done. They steal something they really shouldn't, and chaos ensues. So. Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with that. He writes really kind of fast, lean prose. So it's awesome. Really awesome.
Sounds great.
Right, guys. Well, thanks for coming on and hanging out and talking nonsense with me. And I'll put links down below if everyone check out all your books and all your socials and everything. But nice to talk to you. And
you too, Stephen.
Thank you for having us. Thank you to anyone who's watched or will watch in the future.
Yeah, thanks everyone who tuned in.
Thanks to everyone.
Good night, everyone. We'll see you later.
Take care, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.